Terms like slow life, detox and mindfulness, the demand for organic food and contact with nature, the rise of minimalism. All of these things have become dominant topics in our conversations. And what they all seem to suggest is that there is a need to break with a vicious cycle of stress, a stress that is full of people rushing around, burying themselves deeper and deeper in an excess of technology and products. But is it possible to live on the edge of this daily hurricane of stuff? Is it possible to maintain a healthy relationship with our things? And more importantly, are we preparing our children to be happy and free adults as we immerse them in a society where image is king and wild consumerism seems to control us? We wanted to talk with some families about how they approach raising their children on these issues.
Hello.
This is Maria del Rincón. We would like to interview people from all around the world with different backgrounds, with different situations.
We found out about 7 couples from 5 different countries who were all attending a conference on family and parenting in London. We agreed to meet there. But before we met in person, we started our conversations with each family virtually. We asked the parents about how they had been raised, specifically with regards to money and material possessions. We intuited that in this area of life, as well as in many others, we owe a lot to our parents, and at the same time, we project many of our own desires, insecurities and struggles onto the upbringing that we give our children.
Mi papá salía de la casa con una chaqueta y volvía sin esa chaqueta porque se la había regalado a alguna persona que la necesitaba.
Nos tocó vivir años muy difíciles en Chile.
The biggest punishment I could receive was disappointing my parents.
Dad always says that we got richer with each kid that came along.
Siempre trataban de inculcarnos esta conciencia social.
En México vino una crisis fuertísima en el 1994 y mi padre empeñó la empresa para pagar hasta el último centavo que debía.
Lo material estaba siempre un poco limitado, o sea, tener de todo, pues no.
I was rather aware that the school that I went to was quite a posh school.
My mom and my dad would always send money back to the Philippines.
My childhood was in the wartime, so we passed a difficult time and we passed a very nice time.
Cuando vine a vivir a Santiago, recién casados, nos costó mucho. Uno dice, bueno, porque tengo 5 chicos, no me puedo comprar una bici marca X, que me encantaría.
Finally, we were on our way to London. At last, we would be meeting the couples in person. Although we had already spoken to them for hours, they had told us about how their parents had raised them and how they were trying to approach their own relationships with their possessions. And now we would tackle the exciting topic of raising children, which is what we had wanted to talk about in the first place.
Some of these material things, and certainly me, I've been guilty of this in the past, is that it distracts you from the more important things, or it occupies your mind so much that you can't sort of do other things well. One thing that I've been trying to work on since the kids have been born is talking less about things.
Because that gives up less importance for them. Talk about things that are important. I guess.
Yeah. If Daddy's constantly talking about those things, they might think that is what's important when it's not. So.
Para lograr que nuestras hijas tengan una relación sana con las cosas, intentamos no saturar sus deseos. Es decir, no darles las cosas antes siquiera que las deseen. Por ejemplo, ahora que está muy de moda ir a Disney, pues no llevarlos antes siquiera que lo deseen. Ni siquiera se les antoja ir porque no saben que existe ese lugar y no hay por qué llevarlos, sino esperar a que tengan la edad en la que lo puedan disfrutar, comprender, desear, esperar, ansiar y se lo ganen.
Entonces, con este tema de los viajes o con este tema de Disney, quizás soy yo el que quiero verla, disfrutar, y eso hace que pues sea yo el que esté provocando generarse una necesidad. Entonces, creo que me sirve que digas eso.
Living in London, you mix up with such an extraordinary degree of different types of situation. Very, very wealthy people who take helicopters, and people who are very deprived, lots of poverty, lots of homeless people in London, and you live, shoulder by shoulder with everybody else around you, and it isn't easy actually in London to get a sense of where you fit into it all.
Los chicos a veces en las cosas materiales quieren tener de todo o probar de todo. Entonces es como calmarles la ansiedad. Y claro, vos te das cuenta que en el minuto quisieran tener todo lo tecnológico y a veces, aunque lo puedan pagar con sus propios ahorros, que son pocos, uno le dice, bueno, espera, o sea, no hace falta, o una salida afuera con los amigos, no es necesario que salgas 3 días seguidos, o sea, calma.
El otro día un hijo nuestro se ganó un premio de excelencia académica y él dijo, bueno, ¿qué vamos a comprar? Espera, porque dentro de 3 años o 2 años puede ser que ese dinero te haga falta para tener un laptop o un computador para ir a la universidad. O sea, linkear el tema de la utilidad y la espera.
I guess essentially we want them to be able to have opportunities like we had, and but I think mainly we're just thinking about how can they be more resilient, or how can they be more loving, more generous. That's kind of a picture I have in our heads and in my head, and when we talk about how what we're trying to aim towards, those kind of virtues and those kind of sort of parts of their character that we want to develop. That's what we're trying to get them towards.
I think the foundation stone can be to know how to love the others and to be loved by the others. And this is, I think it's based on, as I said, virtues, confidence in themselves, and value that we received from our parents and they are receiving even. We're transmitting it to the kids.
Creo que le hemos tratado de transmitir que se anclen en el pasarlo bien, en gozar la vida, porque la vida es un regalo. Nos reímos mucho de nosotros mismos, de las
tonteras, de las equivocaciones, de las tonteras, de los recuerdos y de la sencillez. Yo creo que la sencillez es algo súper importante, porque cuando hemos salido de vacaciones, de repente no tenemos dónde almorzar y pasamos a un almacén y compramos un pan y un plátano, y ese es el almuerzo. Entonces yo creo que la sencillez y la simplicidad, digamos, de no ser tan rebuscado, y al final ellos de lo que más se acuerdan es de las cosas más simples o más sencillas.
I think something we know is that if the more you give or think about other people, the happier you are. So bringing them up with that mentality, which is very hard to do in this world because it's all about me, me, me.
Like yesterday, we were listening to a talk on bringing up kind children, and it got me thinking, like, are we doing that? That's obviously something that we want to do.
Que se quieran, que quieran a sus papás cuando sean grandes.
Bueno, yo te haría quizás trotando todo el día o andando en bici, y sé que quizás no tengo que estar todo el día con eso, tengo que estar la mitad y diciéndole, bueno, pero ¿qué es lo que quieres hacer vos?
Claro, uno le gustaría mejor descansar en la casa, pero si no salir a casa están con pantallas o con celulares. Entonces es generosidad de los padres de tener que salir uno mismo y decir, bueno, dejo de hacer algo que me gustaría o nos gustaría a nosotros en pos de los chicos. Creo que hay que ser generosos, hay que ser humildes, reconocer cuando uno se equivoca, pedir perdón al otro, disculpas, hay que salir a la calle. Entonces nosotros intentamos, aunque nos cuesta igual hacerlo con más frecuencia, es ir a algún hogar de ancianos y estar y compartir en familia, y nos hace muy bien también como familia eso.
But yeah, I guess I didn't grow up with a lot of things, and I felt like I don't need those things, and I want the kids to have a very similar kind of set of values where they don't necessarily need to have everything that they want right now. We want them to be grateful for what they have, so they don't feel like they have to have that. Because sometimes they can be really, really focused on missing out on that thing. But yeah. I guess it was sort of freeing them from the need to have that thing.
Definitely they would like to have more, but we don't provide them more, not because we don't have the money or the means to get them, but this is a part of our education, to have the self-control, to work on what they want. Not everything we want in life we can get it, So this is why we don't get them everything. And we explain this, and usually when we say no to get something, we tell them, you cannot get everything in life, or if you want to get something, you have to work hard to get it.
If a kid of 10, 12, 15 years old has everything, when he has 20, 25, after he will graduate, what he's aiming for, what's his perspective, what he wants. If he has everything before, what's the goal?
Estamos tratando de prepararlos para la vida real. Es muy difícil hoy día porque en general no les enseñan eso, sino que los están criando entre algodones, decimos nosotros, de esponjita para que no sufran, para que no les pase nada, y después salen a la vida real y salen indefensos.
Cuesta mucho porque cuando tenemos que retar a un niño de nosotros, porque vemos que no ha sido fuerte, porque se dio, porque se fue por el camino más fácil, a veces los niños lloran de pena y a uno como mamá le duele, al papá le duele que los hijos lloren, porque de repente ellos como niños no nos entienden el trasfondo que hay detrás. Por eso uno por un lado quiere formarlos para la vida siendo niños fuertes, pero a veces uno cede un poco, o sea, uno se equivoca a veces un poco porque...
Que uno tiene que ceder de repente porque si no pasa a ser ya casi un dictador.
Sí.
Que de repente elegir las batallas donde no ceder.
Eso.
Y en las cuales ceder,
claro.
¿ya? Explicándole a los hijos que hay cosas en la vida en las cuales si uno se equivoca, la caída duele mucho, ¿ya? Y en otras no tanto. Entonces uno ahí va eligiendo y puede decir, mira, en esto no vamos a ceder porque es por tu bien.
You know, for the good of our kids, sometimes we have to say no, and they will suffer in life and we can't control that. So, and it's good for them and they will grow from it and we can help guide them through it.
It's difficult, this world. They have to be strong, have to be very strong. So, yeah, I'm sort of a little bit hard to them sometimes. But for me, it's always a struggle because you don't want to say no, because it's such a world and you want to have a good time with your kids.
Sometimes the kids want us to open a lid for them, and sometimes lids can be really, really hard, and I don't want to be able to do everything for them, so I'll just sort of undo it a tiny bit but still make it a little bit hard. I say, okay, now guys, you do it.
No poderles dar todo, quitarles el sufrimiento, aliviárselos un poco. La verdad es que me parte el alma ver a mi hija como sufriendo por cualquier cosa y trato inmediatamente de aliviarlo, es mi primera reacción. Bueno, pues y si le doy esto y si le compro esto, pero luego como que hago un poco de análisis y digo, no, espera, es que esta reacción primaria quizá no pueda ser lo mejor para mi hija. Soy el primero que me cuesta a mí, de verdad es que se me hace bien difícil y tengo que recurrir a cómo eran mis papás con mi hijo y cómo me ayudaron.
I think it's so natural that you take on what you've been brought up with, and then obviously we've had many discussions about the way my parents have raised me as opposed to where his parents raised him.
We recognize a lot of our parents' value, and it's reflecting in the way we are living and the way we are behaving together, or even we are raising our children.
I know in my early 20s, before I met Tamara, I had a very not a very warped view, but a slightly warped view of
an unhealthy relationship with
things, and thinking that was important, or that's what was going to bring me happiness. It didn't make me happy. Tamara and these kids make me happy.